GOP presidential candidate Ron Paul is still with us to discuss the most pressing economic issues and threats facing this country right now. Congressman, welcome back to the show. U.S. debt.
Thank you.
Fast approaching $16 trillion. Unemployment still above 8%. When you look at the universe right now, what do you see as the bigger threat? Is it unemployment or is it our debt levels?
I don't think you can separate them, but if you want the one number, I think it's the debt that does it, because it's a cause of unemployment, because all the money is going into government spending and paying for the debt. So therefore it comes out of the marketplace, and that causes the unemployment. But I think it's the unemployment is a lot worse than 8%, because even the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, when they report the people who don't look for work any longer, it's much higher. So we are in a very serious crisis. But it's big government, big spending, like I mentioned earlier. It's this idea that the Fed is always there and can bail the politicians out, and they are the lender of last resort for the politicians and all the big banks and all the things that they do in this atmosphere that we have today.
Well, you know, theoretically, if companies and corporations thought that the Fed was always going to be there to bail them out and that things could always be good, they might actually be willing to take on a little bit more risk. But we're in an environment right now where CEO after CEO will come on this program and say, you know, they're not feeling confident enough about the future, and they're not feeling confident enough about the rules that will be in place in the future to actually go out and hire.
Well, I think where the real damage being done right now are the politicians. They talk about deficits, and you know, there are about 12 of us that started off in the Republican primary. Nobody else offered a real cut. I think it's so serious, I offered a $1 trillion cut in one year. So it's the government that knows the lender of last resort. There will always buy these treasury bills, will always keep interest rates lower than the market. If the politicians knew interest rates would go bumped up, if they start hogging up all the credit, they would have to quit. They wouldn't be able to finance the wars. They wouldn't be able to finance runaway welfare. They'd have to hold back. So in other words, the Fed's to blame. But politically, it's almost impossible for them to accept that.
The Fed, then, you think, is to blame for basically these huge debt levels, because low interest rates means, you know, it enables Washington to continue spending?
They're an accomplice. It's everybody. The people have an appetite for big government. I mean, in the Republican primary, they want you to go into Iran, and they want you to go into Syria and all these places, even more so than Obama. But the people still have an appetite for welfare, enough for the politicians not to want to cut back. So the people have the appetite. The politicians love to wield power and influence, and that's how they can raise money. And also the Fed is there to accommodate. It doesn't have to come out of savings, but this is where the distortions come from. And you can get away with this for a while. And really the breakdown of the system occurred in 1971. And we've been able to get out of the recessions by spending more and printing more.
Yeah, I want to get to gold in a second.
The last link to gold.
And I want to go there for sure. But first, let me ask you, because you're saying we need to cut all this spending. Otherwise, we're going to have a huge hangover that generations after generations are going to have to deal with. So suppose we do. How do we prevent ourselves from becoming, say, the next Spain? I mean, you look at the austerity measures that they've put in place in Europe after years of spending. Now the austerity is just not working. In fact, it's digging them deeper into trouble. How do we prevent becoming Europe?
Well, if you only do the austerity and you don't correct the other problems, then they're probably a little bit further, in Europe, a little bit further along in their socialistic welfare programs than we are. So just cutting the spending, if you didn't deal with the tax code and the regulatory code and the Federal Reserve, it's going to be difficult. So it is a major, major task. This is why I want to see something in place and something competing with the Federal Reserve, because one day it'll come when the dollar will be deserted. There's no reason in the world for the world to cling to dollars and use the dollar. Already, the other nations are talking about another reserve currency, and there's a lot of talk that the countries that got in the most trouble in the Middle East are the ones who didn't want to use dollars anymore. And they're talking about even selling and buying gold. Now that we put sanctions on Iran, they're talking about buying and selling oil in gold. So one of these days that's going to happen, and there'll be a rush out of the dollar. Interest rates will go up, and this thing will end.
And I know you want to peg the U.S. dollar to gold, correct?
I want the market to decide exactly what to do, but yes, that Constitution still says the dollar should be pegged to gold and or silver, and so that would be better. That would restrain, unless you love big government, if they want the wars and the welfare state, it would put it puts a damper on it. But that'll all
basically
come to
limits
an
what the
end.
Fed can do, right? I mean, you can't have as much flexibility on policy if you've got your dollar tied to gold.
Well, that's exactly what the purpose is. You don't want the flexibility. You want the market to send the indicators, because people at the Fed aren't smart enough to know what the supply of money should be. Oh, last week we just created 25 billion new dollars. And, you know, the interest rate should be 1% instead of 3% because we are so smart. And this will, and because of this confusion, that's one of the reasons the businessman, once the confidence is lost, he doesn't, it's much better for the banks to get money for free and loaning it back to the government at 3%.
Well, if
so
we
they
have
have no incentive to.
Representative Paul, if we have a Bretton Woods 2.0 summit, will you join us?
Well, sure,
Okay.
I would join it, but
So
Bretton Woods was hardly the answer because it was destined to fail.
All right. Well, I've got you on record for that. But then finally, let me just ask you,
Okay.
I mean, you've been a voice of fiscal conservatism in this race. How much longer do you anticipate staying in?
Till the votes are counted.
Till the votes are counted, and if the votes are counted...
right now, just look at this last week and all this happened at these states. I mean, the news are very favorable to us. I mean, we could even end up winning Iowa, ironically enough. And Minnesota, we're doing well, and Maine, and Washington, state of Washington, and Nevada, and Missouri. We're doing very, very well. Some of those states we could well win or come up very much because the delegates process is completely different than these straw votes that have been going on. So we're pleased, and they're on the process. It's got another month or so till they count all the delegates and find out exactly where we stand.
And you'll be there until they count the delegates?
Sure.
Okay. And if the delegates are counted and it turns out that Governor Romney is nominated, will you support him?
Oh, it probably depends a lot of ideas on what his platform is going to be. If every single thing he has in the platform I disagree with, it's going to be tough. You know, what if it's 100% opposite of everything I've said on civil liberties, on the war issues, on spending cuts, on monetary policy? You know, what can I do? I mean, we have millions of people now supporting our campaign, and millions haven't been heard from because they're independents and they're Democrats because they're unhappy with Obama.
Okay.
So to support somebody that might have 100% opposite views of mine, it would be difficult.
Okay.
Hopefully he sticks to his guns about not raising taxes.
Okay, so still up in the air as to whether you will support Governor Romney, but you are sticking at it until all the votes are counted. Our thanks to you, GOP presidential candidate and Texas Congressman Ron Paul.
Thank you.